High fossil fuel prices are good for the planet. Here's how to keep it that way. Switching to renewables will only happen if gas prices remain expensive. It almost feels like this was done on purpose, doesn't it? Now, as we've talked about earlier, this is really going to bite these people in the ass hard when their food prices go through the roof, because you need to, use fuel, which is fucking expensive, to transport that food to your supermarket. In Airstrip 1, it now costs more than £100 to fill up a typical family car with petrol, and oil prices could rise even further. But are such high prices for fossil fuels a bad thing? While attention is focused on measures to tackle global cost of living crisis, there has been much less focus on the very uncomfortable truth that solving the climate crisis requires fossil fuel prices for consumers to stay high forever. Yeah, how about you fart-sniffing motherfucker? How about you give up all of your shit first? Why should everyone else have to suffer for your green agenda? Just give up all your stuff. Make it so you own nothing. You'll be happy. Oh, saying such a thing may seem tone deaf. Millions of households in rich countries are facing a choice between heating and eating. In poor countries, the situation is immeasurably worse. Rising prices for gas have dramatically increased the cost of fertilizer, while the war in Ukraine is hampering the export of its wheat. Yeah, isn't it like between Russia and Ukraine, they have like over half the world's wheat supply, something like that? And the US placed all those sanctions on Russia, so things are going to be getting fun. Together, these are leading to spiraling food prices globally, triggering a surge in inflation and worsening the already dire food security situation in places like the Yemen, the Horn of Africa, and Madagascar. So these same people that keep virtue signaling and writing articles about how climate change disproportionately affects these poor countries, now they're in full support of starving these poor countries to save the environment. At least be honest about it. We are already witnessing widespread food riots like those between 2008 and 2011 when citizens around the world protested the failure of their states to deliver the most basic right, the right to eat. Technically, you don't have any of these rights. Like, the only rights you have are what you can defend yourself. So go at it. Now, to mitigate the impact of high prices, we have seen a screeching reversal of energy policies around the world. In November, current year -1, governments at the COP26 climate conference in Glasgow pledged to tax carbon and eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, but faced with dramatic increases in the cost of fuel and electricity, those same governments have scrambled to slash taxes on energy, put in place price caps, and introduced new subsidies. Oh, God. Those price caps, yeah, that's going to work. Yeah, sure. If you make it so I'm basically operating my business at a loss because you don't think I should be allowed to charge more for something that costs me more, that's just a good way to guarantee I'm just going to walk away. Like, fine, I'm just going to shut the company down and leave then. Yet keeping global warming under 1.5 degrees Celsius requires dramatic reduction in the use of fossil fuels starting now. That unfortunate reality is one of the most effective ways of getting people to use less fossil fuels to ensure they are expensive. Just wait until your fart-sniffing ass can't afford to eat your caviar. Yeah, of course, the best way of moving away from fossil fuels is for there to be better and preferably cheaper alternatives, but investment in these renewable alternatives will only happen if people are clearly switching to them, and that requires consumer prices for fossil fuels to remain high. Oh, man. These guys are doing all this on purpose. If you look at your bill and you notice you paid $20-30 more this week than last week, and you wonder if you're going to have enough money to eat every day until your next paycheck, just remember that these guys did this to you on purpose because they fell for the climate propaganda, hook, line, and sinker, and you are a sacrifice they are willing to make for the greater good. Now, notice none of these losers are willing to sacrifice themselves, but they sure as fuck are going to sacrifice all the rest of us for the greater good. Now, of course, high fossil fuel prices are typically unpopular and can even lead to riots. Between 2005 and 2018, 41 countries had at least one riot directly associated with popular demand for fuel. In current year -3 alone, there were major protests related to energy in Sudan, France, Zimbabwe, Haiti, Lebanon, Ecuador, Iraq, Chile, and Iran, many of which turned into riots. You mean fiery but mostly peaceful protests. No, colleagues and I recently published research showing that these riots are caused by price spikes, often after fuel subsidies have been removed. These price spikes trigger fuel riots when citizens felt they had no other options for voicing their anger over government policies and actions, or when states attempted to violently suppress them for doing so. But we don't need a Second Amendment. It's fine. We got the world's finest, like the Uvalde PD, to guard us if anything happens. High prices, happy citizens. Man, this, you could tell they read some fucking pro-socialist book in high school. Is it possible to keep fossil fuel prices high without triggering riots? The key is to keep consumer prices high by increasing fuel taxes when international oil and gas prices do eventually fall. Making this politically acceptable requires two things to happen. Yeah, nudge everyone into accepting this shitty new reality. Yeah, how they usually do it. If the government wants to force you into a bad option, they get rid of all your better options, and then they leave you with just the bad option they want you to take and like 3 or 4 worse ones. And then they make you feel like you got a good deal with the one remaining bad, like the least horrible of all the bad options. Don't fall for this shit. Don't let them keep getting away with it. You don't have to give up the better options. So first, consumers will not accept high prices if it means high profits for fossil fuel companies. Maintaining high prices for consumers must be complemented by a radical overhaul of the taxation regime facing fossil fuel companies, not just one-off windfall taxes. Those taxes would maintain higher consumer prices, even though the fossil fuel companies wouldn't actually receive very much. So let the government steal all that money instead. Yeah, so this is their way of privatizing the oil industry. So the government is going to keep all the profits, not the company. You see what they're trying to do here? This is all intentional. Enough to cover reasonable costs, but not enough to invest in further fossil fuel production. As the International Energy Agency has pointed out, to achieve net zero by current year plus, what's that, like 23? No, it's not 27. 28. Damn. The amount of investment needed in new oil and gas production is zero. Yeah. They fell for the fucking propaganda hook, line, and sinker, man. Like, these people legitimately believe that if something isn't done now, the whole world is going to be underwater by 1970. They still believe the same lies, the same fear mongering. Now, second, consumers will be much more willing to accept higher prices for fossil fuels if the additional tax they pay is returned to citizens as an equal carbon grant. Alaska has done something similar, putting a share of oil revenues into a permanent fund, which they then distributes through a check to every household each year. Though this approach can go wrong, in Alaska, politicians ended up cutting public services to maintain payments from the state fund. So Alaska has problems getting people to move there and stay there. So this is just an incentive to move to Alaska and stay there. So getting an annual payment equal to the taxes imposed to keep fossil fuel prices high would cushion the hurt from higher prices. Now, this is, again, typical government bullshit. Instead of taking $10,000 from me and giving me back $500 as a stimulus, how about you just don't take the 10,000? Like, that's what people need to start demanding. Instead of giving me back a small portion of my own money that you stole, stop stealing my fucking money. Yeah, it would also be regressive, since those who consume the most fossil fuels would pay more in tax, while those who consume little would pay less, but receive the same amount of payment from the fund and therefore end up in profit. Oh, that's great for me. I work from home. They might also need to be additional compensation for poor groups with high fossil fuel usage, such as people in lower incomes who have to use their cars for work. So they want to implement communism. Yes, I got it. Now, the soaring energy costs are a disaster for poor consumers worldwide, but ironically, they also provide an opportunity to shift the world from fossil fuel addiction. If we take this chance to make fossil fuel prices permanently high, we can accelerate the transition to cleaner energy in a way that is fair for all and avert a deeper crisis in the years ahead. Yeah, I think we might actually be hitting the great filter that people keep bringing up. Now, For those of you who aren't total nerds, the Great Filter is one of the explanations for why we don't see aliens flying around the whole universe. Despite what we know about, exoplanets and how many planets there are in their respective stars' habitable zones and whatnot, the galaxy should be full of alien civilizations. So why don't we see them? What happens? Well, one of the theories is there's great filters and in the development of life. Like one theorized great filter is the hop to multicellular life or complex life from single cell organisms. But I think another one is society as a whole. Like if you have a society that's so obsessed with dragging everyone around like a ball and chain instead of advancing, you're never going to leave your own planet. Like this, if this goes wrong, and it will, these guys are going to drag us back to like pre-industrial revolution levels of lifestyle and technology, thus ensuring we're never going to get off this planet. We're never going to be able to survive a apocalyptic event. The only way for our species to survive long term is to leave our planet, or better yet, eventually leave the solar system. Now, I guess on a more happy note, now I personally believe that the reason we don't see aliens everywhere, it's because even us, like, the Milky Way galaxy is over 100,000 light years across. Our civilization has only been producing like even remotely detectable signals for like what 100 years. So we're sitting in the middle of this tiny 200 light year diameter bubble where, and if any aliens were out there, they could detect our civilization. And even then, unless we put massive amounts of energy into directed signals, they're not even going to get any of our signals. It's going to be background noise at best. Unless alien, I mean, you guys got to realize the distances we're dealing with and how quickly a signal's strength diminishes. Unless there's aliens out there that know we're here and are actively putting effort into communicating with us, we're not gonna see shit. We're not gonna notice each other. There could be a fucking alien civilization in like around fucking Alpha Centauri, and we wouldn't even know about each other unless we were actively looking. Now that's my reasoning for why we haven't found any aliens, and also you got to realize too, what reason would aliens have to come here? Why would aliens bother coming here? Oh, well, our resources, of course. No, no. There's nothing in our solar system that doesn't exist in abundance like elsewhere in the universe and is a lot easier to acquire. The only reason they would even have to come here in particular is because they detect that there's a planet here that has life on it and they want to investigate it. Like literally that's it. Like they would just want to, it would be for us. Like they'd want to see the life forms here. That's it. That's the only fucking reason. So if they don't even know we're here, and it's extremely expensive and time consuming to travel between stars, no, it's not going to happen. But either way, it's not like we're going to become a spacefaring civilization with this shit going on. Yeah, our own species seems hell bent on self destruction.